So welcome everyone. This is session 19, second last one, and we're talking about family and culture. I'd like to introduce to you my colleague Tony. Tony is our learning support coordinator at our school. Only new to our school second time. First time she was here as a parent. And I got to know Tony a few years ago when she brought her child to this school, and she was in our integration program. So now, Tony, as a mother, tell me, what was it like being at a school, having your daughter here as a child in the program, but you yourself were also a teacher, but not at the school? Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Okay, so I was a regular teacher, classroom teacher. Had taken time off. I'd had 2 children previously and was doing a little bit of casual teaching, and 2 of my children were here at this school. And when Victoria was born, she had spina bifida, so that was a shock because we weren't prepped for that. So life changed on the 20th of July 1989 in a big way. So I had really done nothing in the field of special education up until that, and I believe that part of my position here is part of the consequences of having a daughter with a disability and just the journey that took. So historically, she was a very capable academic, cognitive little girl, but she was in a wheelchair, so had all of the problems that are part of the paraplegia. So our goal as a family was very much to normalise her in our family, and she was expected to do most things that everybody did, and we just adjusted or modified or changed things. So it didn't mean life was without frustrations, and as she matured and got older and left the school system and went on to TAFE and was required to be independent, that's when the wheels really started to fall off. We realised that there were more issues other than her physical disability. Her executive functioning was really quite impaired, and her ability to plan and problem solve was really impaired, so which is very much part of spina bifida. So we so life was, we made it as normal as possible. As an educator, it was very frustrating at many times because she wasn't doing what I wanted her to be doing, I thought. So, I had to take my teacher hat off and put my mother hat on sometimes, but it's hard when you have done the training. So through her birth and my journey through meeting with people, I ended up doing a Masters of Special Education, and I worked with an organisation, early intervention program called Lifestyle, for a long time, and developed relationships and expertise in the field. And did they help me as a mum of a child with a disability? I think it more went the other way. I think having Victoria as a child with a disability and my journey as a mother of a child with a disability in a family with a sibling with a disability has probably given me more as an educator rather than the other way. I think that my mothering skills weren't necessarily informed by my expertise. It was the other way around. So that's kind of where we got to. And then I've just continued on because it has become my passion and my reason for being.
So in the wide cyberspace here, we have a lot of teachers and teachers' aides. What advice would you like to give your colleagues when they're dealing with families?
Okay. I always would like to suggest that we've got to see the family as the people who know their child the best. They may think they know them the best in all environments, but I believe we have to defer to their intimate knowledge of where they've travelled from, what they've experienced, and that they're doing the best they can. And I think that is absolutely important, that when we work with a family with a child with a disability, we're not saying we know best. We're saying, let us work together. You know your child best, and we know what this environment is expecting of your child. So let's work together to work a pathway through so that we all come out with the best end. And yes, it is frustrating sometimes when we have parents who either have too high or too low expectations of their children with a disability, but collaboration and working together and keeping the door open to questions and never just sort of dismissing a parent's concerns or frustrations or fears because we think we know best is just totally the wrong practice.
So you mentioned to me before that as a parent, you were frustrated every year you had to come to the school and retell your story every year to every teacher. That must have been very frustrating.
It's incredibly frustrating. You're not only doing it at school, you're doing it at Centrelink and you're doing it at New Doctors. So it's just, you end up almost having a script. You go, okay, here we go again. And when you've got a child with a disability that's not going to just get fixed, then it's like, here we go again. So I certainly take that on board with families. In a new role here, I try to assure families that they don't have to keep retelling their story. If they have shared their story to where they're up to when me and my team meet with them, that it is our job at the school to make sure that the staff and the teachers are informed in that year, but also have clear transitions so that it's not this repetition that feels like no one's listening, that I have to start again all the time. And it's one of the most frustrating. In the end, parents give up and then say, well, they're not going to do anything anyhow because they don't care enough. Yes, there are parents who want to tell their story all the time, and then we've got to listen to that. But I think the retelling, when it has no positive, there's no positive outcome if I feel like, because it means I don't feel I've been heard.
Yeah, it's a hearing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So when you think back of your experience, the best teacher that helped your child, what were their attributes?
Their attributes were energy, were an openness to do something that was probably a little difficult and to consider how they would teach in a really different way and be open to that. That actually had high expectations for my child. Didn't it's when people say, "It's a poor little thing," that we got nowhere. We got far more with teachers who are prepared to say, okay, well, let's look at what the child's strengths are and let's work to those strengths and let's keep and have an expectation of growth and learning. And I think that is the case for a good teacher of a child of any child, but certainly with a child with an impairment of some kind, to have positive expectations, to ask for help when they need to, advice from the parent, but also to actually say, well, I don't know, I'll find out, and let's work together.
The two words that just struck me just then was growth and learning. You want the children to learn and you want them to grow. That's right. No matter what their disability.
Absolutely.
Growth and learning.
And that's expectation because they will.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's enough research to say that our children can learn despite any disability that they have. It's just their trajectory is different and can look different. And it will go up and down in different ways, but we should all have an expectation of growth.
Let's take another tack now, and that's the culture. So some of our students out there, I come from Asian backgrounds, Middle Eastern backgrounds, Anglo-Saxon backgrounds, all types of different backgrounds. What do you think about culture when it comes to disability?
Well, there's a lot of evidence to say that many cultures struggle with the concept of a child with a disability, and dependent on the culture that a parent and a background family have, often impacts the way they even manage and think about their child. I know there are some cultures that have historically seen a child as a disability as some sort of curse on their family, or it's a shame to their family. So an effective worker with the family from an educational basis to actually investigate what the cultural base of it then is first. I think it's very important, and not just assume. And then to work with the family to show, and I think from our perspective is that we keep showing care and we keep showing advice. And if a family has got language barriers or issues, we ensure that we make sure that there's interpreters or that we get the message across, because these families are in our country now and they're working within our school system. But there is also a responsibility, particularly when there's a child with a disability, to understand what that impact might have on the family culturally. They may not ever go to family functions. They may never be invited to things that might be such a shameful thing. And to not have the bright young man that's got to do medicine in a family could be so debilitating for the dad and the mum. So, and it might impact the siblings hugely as well. So it's being aware of the big picture. And I think, you know, in these times, we have to consider the big picture of any student that we work with, but add disability into the mix. It's very significant. There are language barriers and how they access support in the community, and there's a whole lot of issues that we can support and work with a parent, with the family. And I think that's part of my role, because it's a passion, is to try and make sure that happens as best we can.
Yeah, I'm always interested in community access. I think, you know, we take it for granted that we can take our child to the swimming centre, can take our child to the library, the nearest skating park or whatever. But if you've got a disability plus then the language barrier, it does make it doubly difficult to engage with the community.
Exactly. Now, I think when you've got our daughter who had a physical disability, and she was born in '89, so the access issues were a lot worse than they are now. But if we think of barriers, there's a lot of barriers to our families with children with disabilities that those of us, when we've got our regular able students, we don't even notice that that's a barrier to access to, like even families who've got children in wheelchairs. If you can't get through a turnstile, or you can't, you know, how do you travel on the trains? Yes, we all know that there's lifts, but where are they? How do you find that information out? So there are many barriers to community activities, and that's where our understanding of local environment, working with local governments, working with the local councils, find out where the accessible things are. Not just physical, but for language barriers. I think it's very critical. If we can facilitate that, I think that's another value add.
Absolutely. So we're not looking at the child just at school, are we? We're looking at the child at home, in the community, and trying to be a resource person to the family of what's out there in the community and how they can be helped, because eventually they go into the community. They
will transition out, and that's most people's fears, because I work in a K-12 environment. As parents have got students working towards, once they start hitting year 9 or year 10, the fear of the next step starts to really increase. So that's where we work with the Disability Employment Services. We actually, because NDIS is now a reality, how we work with the NDIS and support parents to get involved in that if they haven't done already, and then look at working with TAFE, working with NOVA, all of those other wonderful organisations, so that we are supporting a family, because in the end they have to catch at the end of school and then do the next step. And really after school is fraught with danger. So if we can ensure that at least there's someone at the other end of school that is in a supportive role that is effective, then at least we've handed those parents over, I think in a quality way as best we can.
Yeah. So there you have it. Family issues, cultural issues, and maybe the last one are the mental health issues. Do you see any anxiety or depression coming through with your families in these areas?
Oh, very much so. Very much so. I had a meeting with a family just yesterday. Their son is in year 12. He has an autism diagnosis. He's one of 3 in the family that have an autism diagnosis, and the mother, and he's one of the youngest ones left. So the mother is battling and managing now at home 3 young men with significant mental health issues, and how it then impacts the family, and it significantly impacts. So therefore, what supports can we suggest, or if we're aware of that, we need to have contacts with our community or have a discussion with the leadership at the school to say, look, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm worried about this family, what can we do? And I think that's part of being part of a school community.
Yeah,
mental health issues is huge, and there is statistics to say that in families that have students, kids with disabilities, marriage breakdowns are more rife, family breakdowns, siblings, and relationships with their siblings and between other siblings and their parents are fragmented as well, because all of the focus is on the child with a disability. So it's quite significant, and there are great community support people out there, but if we don't know about it, we can't assume at school that we are the keeper of all of the knowledge. So
correct.
I think it's very important for us to be aware of organisations and be prepared to look and find them for families.
So let me encourage you. You are a resource person. And it behoves us to be in the community, knowing what's available for parents so that we can support them in whatever environment they're struggling with. But, you know, just as a Christian educator, we want the very best for our children, for our families. And let me encourage you to be the most resourceful person on the block. And thanks, Tony, for your time today. And I'll see you for our very last video in session 20.